This is also on Spotify now. Long before the first rays of sunlight shimmer across the broad waters of the Nile, the journey has already begun in quiet anticipation. Somewhere beyond the whispering reeds, a trading boat rocks gently against its mooring while baskets, grain sacks, and neatly coiled ropes wait patiently for another day upon Egypt's great river. Tonight, you won't follow the footsteps of a pharaoh or stand inside a royal palace. Instead, you'll experience ancient Egypt through the peaceful rhythm of an ordinary grain merchant, discovering how one remarkable river quietly connected countless villages, temples, farms, and families for thousands of years. Before we set off on this gentle voyage, if you enjoy these slow journeys through history, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe. It truly helps support the channel and ensures there will always be another peaceful adventure waiting whenever you need a quiet place to unwind. I'd also love to know where you're listening from tonight, or if you could spend just one peaceful day anywhere in the ancient world. Where would you choose to go? Share your answer in the comments below. Reading them always makes these journeys feel just a little more shared. Now, allow yourself to settle into a comfortable position. Let your shoulders soften, breathe slowly, and if a nearby lamp is still shining brightly, perhaps dim it just a little. Let the concerns of today drift away as gently as ripples disappearing across calm water. There is nowhere you need to be, nothing demanding your attention beyond the next peaceful mile. For a little while, the only thing that matters is the quiet current carrying you into the heart of ancient Egypt. As your thoughts become lighter, imagine yourself standing along the eastern bank of the Nile during Egypt's New Kingdom, when the river served as the country's great highway. Around you, the world awakens gently rather than suddenly. Palm fronds stir overhead. Water birds glide through the reeds. The first golden light reaches the tops of mud brick houses, while the river itself remains smooth enough to mirror the pale sky. The earth beneath your sandals feels cool after the night. Ahead lies a modest trading vessel, built from sturdy timbers and broad enough to carry sacks of barley and emmer wheat, harvested from fertile fields only days before. The hull bears the marks of many seasons on the river, each scratch earned through patient journeys rather than violent storms. A man kneels beside the boat, checking the ropes with practiced hands. His linen kilt is plain but carefully woven, and his weathered face carries the calm confidence of someone who has measured time by the river's currents for many years. He notices your arrival and offers a welcoming nod. "You have come early," he says quietly. His voice seems perfectly suited to the peaceful morning. "My name is Mena." He rises, brushes a little river sand from his hands, and smiles with the easy warmth of someone accustomed to long voyages shared with strangers who quickly become companions. "I trade grain between villages," he continues. "The Nile always has another journey waiting. There is no grand introduction beyond that. None is needed." You step aboard while Mena continues securing the cargo. Each sack has been stitched shut with flax thread and marked with simple signs identifying its owner and destination. The grain itself represents months of careful work by farming families whose lives rise and fall with the annual flooding of the Nile. Nearby, another merchant carefully counts jars of beer sealed with clay stoppers. A woman arrives carrying baskets filled with onions, garlic, and dried fish for the crew. Two boys carefully load bundles of papyrus reeds destined for craftsmen farther downstream. Everything happens quietly. Nobody rushes. The river has taught patience. As dawn grows brighter, the sail remains furled while long steering oars guide the vessel gently away from shore. The current begins carrying you northward. This effortless movement is one of the Nile's greatest gifts. While its waters flow toward the Mediterranean, dependable southern winds often allow boats to sail back upstream, making travel possible in both directions with remarkable consistency. The village slowly recedes behind you. Children wave from the riverbank. Several fishermen lift woven traps from shallow water. White egrets stand perfectly still among reeds, waiting for breakfast to swim within reach. The sounds of village life soften until only water brushing against wood remains. Mena sits beside the cargo and begins examining a wax writing tablet listing deliveries to be made during the coming weeks. "You learn much from grain," he says after a while. You glance toward him. A quiet warmth reaches his face. Not from eating it, he taps one of the sacks, from watching where it travels. The thought settles comfortably into the morning. Grain follows people. Where grain moves, families grow. Where harvests succeed, temples receive offerings. Where boats arrive safely, markets become lively. Without ever raising his voice, the merchant has quietly described the heartbeat of an entire civilization. The river widens as the sun climbs higher. Green fields stretch across both banks, interrupted by irrigation channels leading precious water toward rows of barley and flax. Farmers work with simple wooden tools while oxen patiently pull plows through rich black soil left behind after the annual inundation. The contrast between fertile land and surrounding desert feels almost unbelievable. Only a short distance beyond the cultivated fields, pale sand begins stretching toward distant hills where little vegetation survives. It reminds you of seeing an island surrounded by an endless sea, except here the island itself is made of living farmland sustained by a single river. Several hours pass with gentle regularity. The crew adjusts ropes. One sailor hums softly while repairing a woven basket. Another smooths rough edges on a wooden oar using a small stone. Nothing appears dramatic. Every task belongs exactly where it should. Around midday, Mena suggests stopping beside a shaded bank where tamarisk trees lean over the water. The boat is secured with thick ropes wrapped around sturdy trunks. Everyone helps unload cooking pots. A small fire is prepared using dried reeds and gathered branches. Soon the scent of baking flatbread mixes with onions roasting beside it. Dried fish is warmed carefully over the coals, while fresh dates are shared among the crew. You fetch water from a clay jar, cooled by damp cloth wrapped around its surface. The meal is simple. It is filling. It asks for nothing more. While everyone eats, conversation comes only in short exchanges. A sailor remarks that the current seems stronger than last season. Another wonders whether a cousin's vineyard farther north has produced a good harvest. Mena listens more than he speaks. When he finally does speak, it concerns rope fibers that should be replaced before the return journey. Practical matters fill the afternoon as naturally as birds fill the sky. After resting beneath the trees, The crew carefully checks every bundle before loading the vessel once again. No sack is left exposed to unnecessary moisture. Every knot is inspected. Every jar is gently secured. Carefulness is simply another form of respect. As the journey resumes, the afternoon breeze strengthens. Now the square sail is raised. Linen catches the wind with a quiet rustle. The boat glides more smoothly than before, the current and breeze working together in peaceful agreement. You sit near the bow, watching reflections dance across the river's surface. Schools of fish occasionally shimmer beneath the water. A crocodile slips quietly from a muddy bank into deeper water before disappearing completely. Nobody reacts with alarm. The crew has learned to observe wildlife calmly and give it respectful distance. The river belongs to many creatures besides travelers. Toward evening, another vessel approaches from downstream. Its sail has been lowered. Several donkeys stand aboard a larger transport boat, surprisingly calm despite floating upon the river. As the boats pass one another, the captains exchange only a few friendly words. Safe current. And good wind. Nothing more is needed. Each continues towards separate destinations connected by the same timeless water. The western horizon begins softening into warm shades of amber. Long shadows stretch across the fields. Workers finish gathering bundles of harvested grain, while others carry water using balanced shoulder poles. From somewhere beyond the palms comes the distant sound of cattle returning home. The boat reaches a familiar landing place, used regularly by merchants traveling this stretch of the Nile. Several vessels already rest nearby. Some carry stone destined for construction projects farther north. Others transport pottery, linen, timber imported from distant lands, or baskets filled with vegetables. Trade here feels less like competition than cooperation. Everyone depends upon the river. Everyone depends upon one another. Camp is made on shore. The crew unloads only what is necessary for the night. Blankets woven from linen are spread upon smooth ground above the waterline. One sailor quietly mends a torn sandal strap. Another oils a wooden steering oar to protect it from cracking beneath the Egyptian sun. Mena examines tomorrow's route by the fading light. Afterward, he sits beside the river, saying nothing for several minutes. You join him. The Nile reflects the first stars appearing overhead. It never looks exactly the same, he says softly. The river? He offers a quiet gesture of agreement. The water changes. The light changes. We change. He answers gently without taking his eyes from the flowing current. And still it remains the Nile. His words drift peacefully into the evening air. Dinner is little different from midday, though lentils now simmer slowly inside a clay pot, while fresh herbs add gentle fragrance. Nearby, another crew quietly sings an old river song whose melody rises and falls almost like the movement of water itself. No one applauds, no audience gathers. The music simply belongs to the evening. Darkness settles completely. The desert beyond the cultivated land disappears into shadow, while the stars become astonishingly bright above the valley. Without city lights, the heavens seem wonderfully close. Some sailors quietly identify familiar constellations used during longer journeys. Others simply lie back upon folded blankets. A cool breeze replaces the warmth of day. Reeds whisper softly along the shoreline. Somewhere across the river, frogs begin their nightly chorus. The sound blends naturally with flowing water until neither seems separate from the other. You pull your blanket a little closer. Mena has already closed his eyes. Tomorrow, more villages will appear. More grain will change hands. More conversations will quietly begin and end. The Nile will continue carrying boats just as it has for countless generations, asking only patience from those willing to travel upon its gentle waters. Tonight, beneath the vast Egyptian sky, there is nowhere else you need to be. The first hints of dawn arrive not as a burst of color, but as a gradual lifting of the darkness. The stars fade one by one until only the brightest linger above the western horizon. Around the quiet riverside camp, the crew begins to stir with the slow confidence of people whose mornings have followed much the same pattern for many seasons. You wake to the gentle crackle of a small cooking fire being coaxed back to life. A clay pot already hangs above the flames, warming yesterday's remaining lentils with a little fresh water. The cool air carries the pleasant scent of damp reeds mixed with wood smoke, while the river continues its steady movement beside the camp, never having truly rested through the night. Mena is already awake. He kneels beside one of the mooring ropes, running both hands along its woven fibers. Every few moments he pauses, examining places where years of use have begun to soften the flax strands. This one will last another journey, he says quietly, more to himself than anyone else. He coils the rope neatly before placing it beneath the bow. Nearby, another sailor folds linen blankets with careful precision. There is no wasted motion. Each task has become almost instinctive, repeated so often that even before sunrise every movement seems peaceful rather than hurried. Breakfast remains simple. Fresh flatbread baked the previous evening is warmed over the fire. A handful of dates passes from one traveler to another. Cool water from sealed jars refreshes everyone before the day's work begins again. As you eat, birds become increasingly active along the riverbank. Small kingfishers dart low above the water before vanishing into overhanging reeds. Ibises step gracefully through the shallows, their curved bills searching the mud with remarkable patience. Far overhead, geese travel together in careful formations, their calls drifting gently across the morning sky. The boat is loaded once more. Nothing has shifted during the night. Every sack of grain still rests exactly where it belongs. The cargo must remain balanced. A vessel carrying hundreds of measures of grain depends not only upon the strength of its hull, but also upon thoughtful arrangement. Heavy sacks lie low within the center, while lighter baskets occupy the spaces nearer the sides. Mena checks each row without speaking. Satisfied, he unties the final rope. The crew pushes gently against the riverbank. The boat glides free. Soon the current welcomes you once again. The Nile seems almost different in the early light. Yesterday afternoon its waters reflected bright gold. Now they carry soft shades of silver and pale blue beneath the growing morning sun. Both banks remain wonderfully alive. Farmers are already working in the fields before the heat becomes too strong. Some guide oxen pulling wooden plows through dark soil. Others scatter seed by hand with steady, practiced movements. Children help gather bundles of cut flax, while older family members repair small irrigation channels leading water from the river into carefully measured plots. You notice how every field seems connected. Nothing appears random. Low earthen walls guide precious water exactly where it is needed. Small gates allow farmers to control its flow. Much of this careful irrigation has been refined over generations, each family adding its own experience to knowledge passed down through countless harvests. Watching them reminds you of a carefully tended garden. Although this garden stretches farther than your eyes can comfortably follow, the boat passes several small fishing skiffs. Their crews lift woven nets with patient rhythm. One fisherman raises a hand in greeting. Mena returns the gesture. "No catch yet?" he calls. The fisherman smiles. "Enough for breakfast." The answer seems perfectly satisfying. Nobody asks for more. The river provides differently each day. As the sun climbs higher, a village begins appearing ahead. Its mud brick homes blend naturally into the landscape, their walls sharing nearly the same warm color as the surrounding earth. Date palms rise between rooftops, offering welcome shade. Whitewashed granaries stand slightly apart from the houses, elevated enough to protect valuable stores from damp ground and wandering animals. Children notice the approaching boat before anyone else. They wave enthusiastically from the landing place, while several adults gather beside stacks of woven baskets awaiting transport. The crew secures the vessel alongside a wooden quay built from heavy beams driven deep into the riverbank. Mena climbs ashore carrying his wax tablet. A village official approaches wearing clean linen and a simple necklace bearing the symbol of his local office. Their conversation remains polite and practical. The southern harvest arrived safely? It did. The grain is dry, very dry. The measures match? They will. Nothing dramatic unfolds. Instead, two experienced men quietly confirm what both already expect. Several workers begin unloading sacks. You decide to help. Each sack proves heavier than it first appeared. The grain inside shifts gently as you lift it onto your shoulder. Walking carefully across the quay, you place one beside the granary entrance, where another worker marks each delivery using ink upon a sheet of papyrus. Writing remains a specialized skill in Egypt. Most people record agreements through spoken trust and witnessed exchanges, but merchants handling valuable cargo often rely upon scribes, whose careful handwriting preserves every transaction. Inside the granary, cool air immediately replaces the growing warmth outside. The thick mud brick walls keep stored grain dry and protected from the strongest heat of summer. Wooden bins line the interior, each carefully cleaned before receiving new harvests. One elderly worker smiles as another load arrives. This year's barley smells good. You pause. He is right. Fresh grain carries a faint sweetness almost hidden beneath the scent of straw. It is a smell impossible to notice from a distance, but unmistakable once inside the granary. By midday, the deliveries are complete. In return, the crew receives goods requested farther north. Several jars of pressed sesame oil are carefully wrapped in woven mats. Bundles of finely spun linen are loaded beside the remaining grain. A carpenter delivers replacement wooden pegs shaped specifically for riverboats. Nothing aboard travels without purpose. Every item already belongs somewhere farther along the Nile. Before departure, Mena purchases several fresh cucumbers and a basket of figs from a woman seated beneath a palm tree. She thanks him warmly. "You always return," he answers gently. "The river always returns me." She laughs softly. So it does. The exchange lasts only moments, yet it carries the comfortable familiarity of people whose lives have crossed many times before. Once underway again, the boat leaves the village behind. The current remains gentle. The afternoon breeze freshens just enough for the crew to raise the sail. Its broad linen surface fills steadily, and the vessel begins moving with remarkable ease. You settle near the bow where cool air drifts across the water. Along the eastern bank, herds of cattle graze peacefully among patches of green pasture. Shepherds guide goats between low shrubs while women carry woven baskets balanced gracefully upon their heads. The landscape never remains exactly the same for long. One stretch of fertile farmland gives way to papyrus marshes alive with birds. Soon afterward, clusters of acacia trees appear beside sandy banks. Then another village slowly emerges beyond distant palms. The river never allows your eyes to grow idle. Later in the afternoon, dark clouds begin gathering far to the south, not storm clouds. Instead, they appear as soft veils of moisture suspended high above the horizon. Mena notices your curiosity. "The lands beyond us receive the rains," he explains quietly. "The Nile remembers them. He needs say little more. Long before reaching Egypt, waters flowing from distant highlands have already begun a journey of their own. Every flood that nourishes these fields begins hundreds of miles away, where entirely different skies govern another landscape. It is an extraordinary thought. Standing here, you are quietly connected to places you cannot see. Rather like receiving a letter written weeks earlier, the river carries distant seasons into the present. By late afternoon, the crew notices another trading vessel approaching from upstream under full sail. Its painted bow displays symbols identifying merchants from a town farther south. The two boats drift close enough for conversation without stopping. "How are the northern markets?" calls one captain. "Busy." "And grain?" "Still needed." The reply travels clearly across calm water. Satisfied, both crews continue onward. News spreads along the Nile as naturally as cargo itself. As evening approaches, the boat reaches a broad stretch where the river widens considerably. Here the current slows almost imperceptibly. Water lilies float quietly near sheltered coves, while dense stands of papyrus sway gently whenever the breeze strengthens. Several hippos surface in the distance. Only rounded backs and curious ears appear above the water before they disappear once again beneath the surface. The crew watches respectfully. Nobody steers closer. The animals are simply another part of the river's living world. Camp is made upon a gently sloping bank covered with soft grass unusually close to the water. After securing the vessel, everyone works together almost without speaking. Cooking stones are arranged, firewood gathered, water jars refilled. Mena removes one of the steering oars for inspection. You kneel beside him as he rubs fresh oil into the smooth wood using a linen cloth. He turns the oar slowly in fading sunlight. "Wood remembers care," he says. If neglected, he gently taps a tiny crack beginning near one edge. It remembers that as well. He smooths more oil across the grain until the surface shines warmly. Nearby, dinner begins to simmer. Tonight the meal includes barley porridge flavored with onions and herbs purchased that morning. Fresh figs provide welcome sweetness afterward. No feast could feel more satisfying. As darkness slowly settles over the Nile once again, conversations become fewer. A young sailor quietly tells another about his newborn daughter, waiting in a village farther downstream. Someone wonders whether this year's flood will rise a little higher than the last. Another speaks of replacing worn sandals before the next long voyage. The topics remain wonderfully ordinary. Life itself becomes the story. After eating, Mena walks a short distance from camp toward the water's edge. You join him once again. The moon has risen, laying a shimmering path across the slow-moving river. For several peaceful moments, neither of you speaks. Finally, he says, almost in a whisper, "When I was a boy, I believed every journey ended at its destination." He watches the moonlight ripple across the Nile. "Now I think each destination simply becomes the beginning of another journey." His words seem perfectly suited to the quiet evening. The river continues flowing north as it always has. Tomorrow it will carry more boats, more merchants, more farmers, more travelers. And gently, almost without noticing, it will carry you farther into the living heart of ancient Egypt. Morning arrives beneath a sky so clear that the first rays of sunlight seem to unfold slowly across the river instead of bursting into view. The camp stirs with familiar sounds, the quiet splash of someone washing a cooking pot at the water's edge, the gentle rustle of folded linen, and the soft creak of timber as the trading boat shifts against its moorings. You sit for a moment before standing, allowing yourself to notice how different the Nile feels each morning despite its constant flow. Yesterday evening, the water reflected the pale glow of the moon. Now it glimmers with delicate bands of gold, interrupted only by the graceful wake of water birds already searching for breakfast. Mena has risen before nearly everyone else. He stands near the bow, looking not at the cargo, but at the sky. His attention rests on the direction of the breeze. Without speaking, he wets a finger and raises it slightly. The movement is so practiced that it seems almost part of the landscape itself. After a quiet moment, he answers without speaking. "A good wind from the north." One of the sailors smiles. "We'll make steady progress." The square linen sail is carefully unfolded. Several crew members pull together on thick ropes while another steadies the mast. The sail climbs little by little until the morning breeze catches it with a gentle snap. Almost immediately the boat responds, leaning ever so slightly before gliding back into the center of the current. The camp disappears behind you. Only faint traces remain where last night's fire rested upon the ground. The crew has left nothing unnecessary behind. Ashes are scattered. Loose reeds are gathered. The riverbank returns almost exactly to the way it looked before anyone arrived. As the vessel gains distance, the eastern bank begins revealing broad stretches of cultivated land. Irrigation channels branch away from the Nile like veins spreading through fertile earth. Water flows calmly through each narrow trench, feeding carefully measured plots where barley heads sway softly in the breeze. Farmers work quietly among them. Some kneel to remove weeds. Others carry woven baskets filled with seed. Nearby, a pair of oxen patiently turns a wooden device used to lift water from a lower canal into a higher one. The steady rhythm of the work continues without interruption, the animals moving at a pace that seems almost perfectly matched to the river itself. You notice how little is wasted. Broken pottery has been reused to strengthen paths between fields. Old reed mats cover stacks of harvested grain. Even worn pieces of rope have found new purpose securing bundles of firewood. The longer you travel through Egypt, the more clearly you begin to understand that careful use of every resource is woven into daily life. Nothing useful is discarded simply because it has grown old. Hours pass peacefully. The river bends gently westward. Low cliffs begin appearing in the distance, their pale limestone faces glowing warmly beneath the rising sun. Small shrines can occasionally be seen near the base of these hills, marked by simple stone altars where travelers sometimes leave flowers, bread, or small offerings before continuing their journeys. Mena notices your eyes lingering there. Many people give thanks before long voyages. He lets the thoughts settle. Others give thanks after. He says with quiet confidence gently, "Some do both." The boat continues onward beneath the quiet watch of the cliffs. By mid-morning another vessel approaches, larger than most you have seen during the journey. Its hull rides lower in the water beneath the weight of massive stone blocks carefully secured with heavy timbers. The crew aboard works slowly and deliberately. Stone cannot be hurried. As the boats pass, Mena exchanges greetings with the other captain. From the quarries, the man quietly signals the crew. Fine limestone, for temple builders and royal workshops. The conversation lasts only moments before the current separates the two boats once again. Watching the heavy cargo drift away reminds you that grain is only one thread within Egypt's vast network of trade. Stone, timber, papyrus, copper, linen, oils, pottery, incense, and countless other goods travel these waters together, each supporting another craft somewhere farther along the river. Before long, the crew begins preparing for another stop. This landing is smaller than yesterday's village. Only a handful of houses stand beneath clusters of sycamore fig trees, their broad branches offering deep shade from the strengthening sun. A modest wooden dock extends into the river, beside which several fishing boats have already been tied. As the merchant vessel reaches shore, the scent of fresh bread drifts through the warm air. A baker has already begun the day's work. Round loaves cool upon woven trays, while nearby children patiently wait for their family's share. The landing itself remains pleasantly busy without ever becoming crowded. A potter carefully unloads newly fired jars. A shepherd leads several sheep toward higher ground. An elderly woman sits beneath a reed canopy, weaving baskets whose patterns seem almost as old as the river itself. Mena greets many people by name. "Nebet," she smiles from beneath her basket of reeds. "You've arrived sooner than I expected. The wind has been kind." She glances toward the grain sacks. "And the harvest? A generous one." Their conversation continues while you help carry several smaller bundles ashore. Among today's deliveries are sacks destined for the village bakery. The baker unties one carefully and scoops a handful of grain into his palm. He examines it closely. Dry, evenly colored. free from stones. Satisfied, he quietly signals the crew with quiet approval. This will grind well. Nothing more needs to be said. Quality announces itself without lengthy discussion. While the cargo is exchanged, you wander only a short distance through the village. The narrow paths remain pleasantly cool beneath the shade of trees. Mud-brick homes stand close together, their walls thick enough to keep interiors comfortable even during Egypt's hottest afternoons. Several doorways remain open. Inside one house, a family shapes dough upon a smooth stone surface. Elsewhere, linen hangs drying upon ropes stretched between wooden posts. You notice painted decorations near some entrances, simple patterns, lotus flowers, geometric designs, protective symbols, nothing extravagant, just quiet touches of beauty added to everyday life. A young boy carefully carries water from a communal well. The jar appears almost too heavy. Seeing your glance, an older sister reaches over and steadies it without interrupting her own pace. The two continue walking together. No words are exchanged. Some forms of kindness require no explanation. Soon it is time to return to the boat. Before departing, Mena purchases a small bundle of fragrant herbs wrapped neatly in damp cloth. "Our cook likes these," he explains. They keep well for several days. As the village fades behind you, preparations begin for the midday meal. Unlike yesterday, the crew decides not to land. Instead, a small clay brazier is carefully secured upon a bed of sand placed inside a shallow container aboard the vessel. Such fires are kept small and watched closely. A pot of lentils simmers slowly while onions, garlic, and herbs flavor the broth. The aroma drifts gently across the deck. Flatbread is warmed beside the pot. Fresh cucumbers are sliced with a bronze knife. The meal is shared while the boat continues drifting northward. Eating without stopping feels strangely peaceful. The river keeps moving. So does the journey. You lean against one of the grain sacks after lunch, watching the changing landscape. Palm groves alternate with open pasture. Papyrus marshes give way to stretches of cultivated farmland. Occasionally small islands appear in midstream, covered with reeds where nesting birds gather in remarkable numbers. White pelicans rest together near one sandy shore. Cormorants spread dark wings to dry after diving beneath the surface. Even the birds seem to understand the quiet rhythm of the Nile. The afternoon grows warmer. Most conversations become shorter. Work continues steadily. One sailor repairs a torn fishing net using fine flax cord. Another sharpens a bronze knife upon a smooth stone. Mena carefully updates his wax tablet, scratching small notes beside completed deliveries. You ask whether he ever forgets where each cargo belongs. He chuckles softly. Sometimes he taps the tablet. So I let the tablet remember with me. The answer feels comforting. Even experienced merchants appreciate a little help keeping track of many journeys. Later, the wind eases. The sail loses some of its fullness. Without complaint, several crew members lower it halfway, while others take up long oars. The transition happens almost silently. Each person already knows the task awaiting them. The steady dipping of oars creates gentle circles spreading across the water. You watch one ripple meet another until they disappear. The pattern reminds you of quiet conversations. Each begins with a single voice, spreads outward for a time, then softly fades, leaving the river unchanged. Toward evening, the boat reaches a broad floodplain where the banks open into wide fields stretching toward distant villages. Here the signs of the annual inundation remain easy to see. Dark, fertile soil lies in rich layers across the land. Small ridges mark where floodwaters once rested before slowly withdrawing. Farmers continue repairing embankments in preparation for future seasons, understanding that next year's harvest begins long before the next seed is planted. Mena stands beside you. When the flood is generous, he says, everyone prepares. And when it is smaller, he looks thoughtfully across the fields. Everyone prepares then as well. There is quiet wisdom in the reply. Preparation belongs to every season, not only the fortunate ones. As sunset approaches, today's campsite is chosen upon a small rise overlooking a gentle curve of the river. The view stretches for miles. The water catches the final light until it appears almost like polished copper. The crew unloads only what they need. Dinner is prepared while someone gathers fallen branches from a nearby grove. Another sailor checks each water jar, refilling those that have grown light during the day. Mena spreads a simple reed mat beside the fire. He removes a small cloth bundle from his pack. Inside rests a handful of smooth river stones collected during many different journeys. You look at them curiously. He notices. My father collected them. He turns one over in his hand. Now I do. Each stone is different. One pale, another dark, one nearly round, another long and narrow. None appears especially valuable, yet each carries the memory of another place along the Nile. After a moment he places them back into the cloth. They help me remember where I have been. The fire burns lower. Night birds begin calling from the reeds. Far across the river, a temple's evening incense rises in a thin ribbon toward the stars. The crew settles into comfortable silence once more. The Nile flows gently beside your camp, carrying reflections of moonlight just as faithfully as it carried grain throughout the day. There is no need to hurry tomorrow. The river has never rushed to reach the sea. The coolness of the night lingers just a little longer than expected. Before the first hint of sunrise, the breeze crossing the Nile carries the fresh scent of water lilies and damp earth, while the camp remains wrapped in a gentle stillness. Somewhere among the reeds, a single heron calls into the darkness. Its quiet cry fades almost immediately, leaving only the endless murmur of the river flowing northward. You lie still for another moment beneath your linen blanket, listening as ancient Egypt awakens one careful sound at a time. Someone nearby stirs glowing embers back into a small fire. A clay jar is lifted. Footsteps move softly across the grass. The familiar creak of the merchant boat greets the river as it rocks gently against its mooring. There is something deeply reassuring about how little changes from one morning to the next. Not because each day is identical. Far from it. Rather, the small routines provide steady ground upon which every new journey quietly begins. Mena is kneeling beside the stern, carefully inspecting the rudder lashings. The leather bindings have dried slightly after many days beneath the Egyptian sun. He moistens them with a little water before tightening each knot once again. You care for a boat, he says without looking up, the way you care for a good pair of sandals. you smile. If you ignore either one, the road becomes much longer. His comparison feels wonderfully practical. The crew gathers for breakfast while the eastern sky slowly changes from deep blue to pale amber. Fresh bread is broken into smaller pieces and dipped into a thick paste of crushed beans flavored with herbs and garlic. Cool water follows, and sweet dates finish the simple meal. No one eats quickly. The day's work has already taught everyone patience. As the sail is raised once more, the morning wind proves even steadier than yesterday's. The broad linen cloth fills smoothly, pulling the vessel away from shore with almost effortless grace. The current joins the wind. Together they guide the merchant boat along the great river that has shaped Egyptian life for thousands of years. The banks begin changing almost immediately. The wide floodplain gradually narrows, and clusters of taller palms appear closer to the water. Their reflections stretch across the calm surface before breaking apart beneath the gentle wake of the boat. Beyond them stand groves of sycamore figs, whose broad branches shelter travelers resting during the hottest hours of the day. Several donkeys wait patiently beneath one tree, while their owners tighten leather packs filled with pottery. The animals flick their ears lazily at passing insects. A little farther along, a narrow path follows the riverbank. 3 travelers walk together beneath the morning sun. One carries a bundle of woven mats upon his shoulders. Another balances a long staff from which several clay jars hang. The third appears to be leading a pair of goats toward the next village. They raise their hands in greeting. The crew answers with quiet smiles. Within moments, both parties continue their separate journeys. The Nile connects many people who may never meet again, yet even these brief greetings seem enough. As the morning unfolds, Mena invites you to help organize several smaller bundles near the bow. The cargo has shifted only slightly overnight. Together, you slide baskets into better positions, placing heavier items lower while protecting delicate jars beneath folded reed mats. The merchant works slowly. Every movement seems measured. Nothing is forced. He gently presses one sack of barley with both hands. Still dry. Another, no settling. Finally he nods. Good. There is satisfaction in careful work completed well. Not excitement. Not celebration. Simply quiet confidence. The boat rounds another bend, and the landscape opens into one of the broadest stretches of river you have yet seen. Several islands rise from the water, covered with dense papyrus that sways gently in the breeze. The green stems stand much taller than you expected. Their feathery tops ripple together almost like waves upon another smaller sea. Among them, birds move constantly. White egrets lift into the air before settling again only a short distance away. Purple herons stand almost perfectly still. Tiny songbirds dart between the reeds with astonishing speed. The marshes seem endlessly alive. Mena notices your interest. Papyrus gives many gifts. He points toward the thick stands. Writing, he gestures toward another patch. Boats, then another. Rope, he chuckles softly. Even baskets. You realize that one plant quietly serves countless purposes throughout Egyptian life. Nearby, one of the sailors begins repairing a small section of woven mat using fresh strips of papyrus fiber. Watching his hands move reminds you of someone carefully repairing fabric today. The motions are just as patient. though every material comes directly from the river rather than a workshop. By late morning, the boat approaches a busy riverside landing unlike any you have visited before. Long wooden docks stretch into the Nile. Several merchant vessels wait their turn. Others have already tied alongside. Voices carry softly across the water, not loud, simply numerous. Trade fills the air. As your boat draws closer, countless details begin revealing themselves. Men unload baskets of grapes gathered from vineyards farther south. Potters stack carefully fired jars upon padded reed mats. Bundles of flax wait beside neatly carved wooden furniture. A shipment of copper tools gleams softly beneath linen coverings. Nearby, fishermen display freshly caught tilapia and Nile perch upon woven trays packed with damp reeds to keep them cool. The scents mingle naturally. Fresh bread, river water, cut wood, clay, herbs, smoke from cooking fires. The landing is busy, yet never chaotic. Everyone appears to know exactly where they belong. Mena secures permission to unload several sacks of grain destined for local storehouses. As workers begin carrying them ashore, you accompany him toward the marketplace itself. The market occupies an open square shaded by woven awnings stretched between wooden poles. Sunlight filters through the reeds overhead, creating shifting patterns across the ground. Stalls display goods with quiet pride rather than loud persuasion. A woman arranges onions into careful rows. Beside her, another merchant measures spices using small stone weights balanced upon bronze scales. Several jewelers polish beads made from faience, their brilliant blue colors catching the light. A carpenter carefully demonstrates the smooth movement of a cedar chest lid to an interested customer. Every trade has its place. Every craft supports another. Mena takes a slow breath beside a linen merchant. The two men greet each other warmly. It has been many months. The river carried me elsewhere. And now? North again. They examine several bolts of finely woven linen. The merchant invites Mena to feel the cloth. It is astonishingly smooth, almost cool beneath your fingertips. The weaving comes from a village east of here, the linen merchant explains. The threads were spun during the flood season. Mena purchases only a modest length. Enough for sail repairs. Enough for replacing worn clothing. No more. He believes in carrying what is needed rather than what is merely available. As you continue walking through the market, a scribe sits beneath a shaded canopy writing contracts upon fresh sheets of papyrus. His reed pen moves steadily. Occasionally he looks across the river to sprinkle fine sand across the ink before gently brushing it away. The finished writing remains crisp and clear. Several merchants wait patiently nearby, discussing deliveries while their documents dry. Knowledge itself becomes another valuable cargo carried along the Nile. By midday, the warmth encourages nearly everyone to slow their pace. Many stalls remain open, but conversations become quieter. People gather beneath trees or awnings to enjoy the shade. The crew returns to the boat, carrying fresh vegetables, herbs, and a small basket of pomegranates purchased for the coming days. Before departing, Mena carefully refills every water jar. He inspects each stopper twice. Clean water is never taken for granted. The river surrounds you. Drinking safely still requires care. Soon the mooring ropes are released. The busy landing gradually slips behind. Voices fade. The docks become smaller. Before long, only the tallest palm trees remain visible above the riverbank. Once again, the Nile belongs mostly to birds, fishermen, and quiet travelers. The afternoon passes with gentle purpose. One sailor begins patching a section of sailcloth using the newly purchased linen. His stitches are remarkably even. Another shapes a replacement wooden peg with a small bronze knife. Tiny curls of wood fall quietly onto the deck before being gathered and saved for the evening fire. Nothing useful is wasted. You notice Mena studying the shoreline. What are you looking for? He points ahead. A stand of tamarisk trees. You know them from here? He nods. My father tied his boat there. He looks quietly pleased softly. I have done the same for 20 years. Sure enough, by late afternoon, the trees appear exactly where he expected. Their branches lean gracefully over a sheltered stretch of shoreline where the current slows just enough to provide calm water for the night. The boat glides toward them almost as though returning to an old friend. Camp is prepared with familiar ease. The fire is built. Cooking begins. One sailor gathers fallen twigs while another rinses cooking pots with a little clean water before drying them carefully. Tonight's meal includes barley porridge enriched with fresh herbs from the market and slices of cucumber shared among everyone aboard. Afterward, the pomegranates are opened. Their ruby-colored seeds glisten beneath the fading light. Each person receives only a small portion. Their sweetness feels all the greater because it is shared. As darkness gently settles across the Nile, Mena reaches into his pack and removes a small wooden flute. You had not known he carried one. He lifts it to his lips. The melody is quiet. Unhurried, simple enough that it feels almost like another sound of the river rather than a performance. No one speaks while he plays. The notes drift across the calm water, mingling with the whisper of reeds and the distant calls of night birds. When the final note fades, he carefully wraps the flute again and places it back inside his bag. Nothing more is said. The silence afterward is every bit as beautiful as the music itself. Above you, the stars slowly brighten until they fill the Egyptian sky once again. The Nile reflects them with gentle patience, carrying their shimmering light northward just as faithfully as it carries grain, merchants, memories, and every quiet traveler fortunate enough to journey upon its ancient waters. The gentle notes of Mena's flute seem to linger in the cool night air long after the instrument has been tucked away. As you settle beneath your blanket, the sounds of the river slowly become the only music that remains. Water brushes softly against the hull. Reeds whisper whenever a breeze passes through them. Somewhere far across the Nile, a jackal calls once before the silence gently gathers itself again. Sleep comes easily beneath such a sky. When morning arrives, it does so almost imperceptibly. The stars retreat one by one, and a faint silver light spreads across the eastern horizon. Mist hangs low over the water, blurring the opposite bank until the palm trees appear like quiet silhouettes painted upon linen. You breathe in the cool air before the warmth of the day has a chance to replace it. It smells of fresh water, damp soil, and growing reeds. The crew begins their familiar routine. Blankets are folded. Cooking pots are rinsed. The ashes from last night's fire are scattered among the sand, where they will leave little trace. One sailor walks a short distance along the shore, gathering dry branches that floated in during the night. Another checks each mooring rope before carefully coiling it aboard. Mena crouches beside the hull. Instead of looking upward, he runs his hand slowly across the timber just above the waterline. You kneel beside him. What are you looking for? His eyes brighten slightly. The boat tells you how she feels. His fingers pause over one narrow seam where the fibers between two planks have settled slightly. A small pouch hangs from his belt. From it he removes a little ball of resin mixed with animal fat and plant fibers. With a flat wooden tool, he presses the mixture gently into the seam. The repair takes only a few minutes. No leak had yet appeared. The work is done before one ever has the chance. It is easier, he says quietly, to care for something that is still strong. The lesson feels larger than the boat itself. Soon everyone pushes the vessel gently back into the river. The morning breeze has not yet fully awakened, so long oars guide the first part of today's journey. The rhythmic splash becomes almost hypnotic. Each stroke enters the water without hurry. Each blade rises again, carrying bright droplets that briefly catch the sunlight before falling back into the Nile. As the mist slowly lifts, more of the valley reveals itself. Broad fields stretch along both banks. Some have already been harvested, leaving neat rows of golden stubble across the dark soil. Others remain green with younger crops that sway gently beneath the breeze. The contrast between rich farmland and the pale desert beyond remains remarkable. The fertile valley is never especially wide. In many places, it feels as though life itself gathers close to the river before the sands begin again. You find yourself imagining the Nile as a long ribbon carefully stitched through the land, holding everything together. The comparison comes naturally. Without the river, these villages would stand isolated from one another. With it, they become neighbors. Before long, the wind strengthens enough for the sail to rise once more. The linen cloth fills gradually. The oars are lifted aboard. The crew settles into quieter work. One sailor begins polishing several bronze tools with fine sand and cloth until their surfaces catch the growing light. Another carefully counts sealed jars stored beneath a woven covering. Each receives a small mark upon Mena's wax tablet. Nothing is left to memory alone when careful records can prevent confusion later. The river bends gently around a low island where clusters of date palms grow in surprising abundance. Their trunks lean slightly toward the water, and bunches of ripening fruit hang beneath broad fronds that rustle softly overhead. Several families are already at work there. Some climb the trees using woven belts looped around both themselves and the trunks. Others spread reed mats below to collect fallen dates. Children sort the fruit into baskets according to ripeness. The boat slows near the shore, not to trade, simply to greet familiar faces. An older man standing beneath one of the palms recognizes Mena immediately. "You've come a little earlier this year. The wind has helped us. And the river?" Mena glances across the calm current. She has been generous. The old man nods with quiet satisfaction. One of the women walks to the shoreline carrying a small basket. She offers several fresh dates to the crew. In return, One sailor hands her a bundle of herbs purchased at yesterday's market. Neither waits a moment before continuing to discuss value. The exchange seems built as much upon friendship as trade. As the boat continues northward, you taste one of the fresh dates. It is softer than the dried fruit shared during earlier meals. Its sweetness spreads slowly, needing no honey or seasoning. Mena notices your expression. The first harvest is always my favorite. He says nothing more. Some pleasures require no explanation. The river gradually becomes busier as the morning advances. Fishing boats drift among the shallows. Small ferries carry farmers, livestock, and baskets of produce from one bank to the other. A larger government vessel passes carrying officials whose work will take them to several towns farther north. Their boat bears painted insignia near its bow, and its crew rows with practiced precision. The captains exchange respectful greetings before continuing their separate journeys. Travelers of every kind share these waters. By the middle of the morning, a cluster of buildings appears ahead, unlike the villages you have visited before. Their walls stand taller. Several storehouses rise above the surrounding rooftops. Near the river, broad ramps lead upward from the docks, where laborers steadily move goods between boats and warehouses. This town stores grain for many districts, Mena explains. The harvest passes through here before continuing onward. As your vessel approaches the quay, the quiet order of the place becomes immediately noticeable. Workers move in long lines carrying sacks upon their shoulders. Scribes sit beneath shaded shelters recording deliveries. Officials inspect measures using carefully carved wooden containers whose sizes remain consistent for every merchant. Fair trade depends upon trusted measurements. Mena welcomes the inspections without concern. His grain has already been checked many times during the journey. Still, each town follows its own careful procedures. One official unties a sack. He pushes a long wooden sampling rod deep into the grain before withdrawing it. The kernels slide into his hand. He examines them. Dry, clean, even, satisfied, he ties the sack closed once more. You've kept it well. Mena inclines his head. The farmers grew it well. The official smiles at the answer. Credit belongs where it is due. While much of the cargo is unloaded, you walk only a little farther along the dock. Nearby, shipwrights are repairing another merchant vessel that has travelled many more seasons than yours. One craftsman shapes a replacement plank using an adze. Another heats resin in a small clay pot before sealing fresh joints. The smell of warm pine resin drifts pleasantly through the air. Wood shavings gather around their feet like curled ribbons. Watching them work, you notice how every blow of the tool seems measured. There is no rushing. A hurried repair would only invite another repair sooner. Much like Mena's careful work before dawn, these craftsmen understand that patience often saves time. By midday, today's business has been completed. Several empty spaces within the boat now hold new cargo. Large jars of vegetable oil rest securely within padded reed frames. Fine linen occupies another section beneath protective coverings. Bundles of papyrus prepared for scribes farther north are stacked neatly along one side. The grain that remains aboard has already found its future destinations. As the boat slips away from the busy town, the sounds of commerce gradually fade behind you. Soon only the splash of water against the hull remains. The afternoon unfolds peacefully. Clouds drift lazily across the brilliant sky. The breeze softens. The crew shares a quiet meal of bread, onions, fresh dates, and a little soft cheese purchased that morning. No one speaks very much. There is comfort in eating together without feeling obliged to fill every silence. Later, Mena joins you near the bow. He watches the water for a long while before speaking. When I was young, he says, I believed every voyage was about reaching the next town. He rests one hand upon the smooth rail. My father used to laugh. You wait. He would tell me, the towns feed your family. The river teaches you how to live between them. The words settle gently in your thoughts. The destinations matter. But so does everything that happens quietly along the way. The Nile continues carrying your little vessel northward through the warm afternoon, just as it has carried countless others for generations. The water neither hurries nor lingers. It simply keeps moving with calm purpose, inviting you to do the same. By the time the afternoon sun begins its slow descent, the warmth has settled comfortably across the valley. It is no longer the bright, eager heat of late morning, but a gentler glow that softens the colors of the landscape. The fields seem richer now, their greens deepened beneath the lengthening light, while the broad surface of the Nile reflects the sky in quiet shades of blue and gold. The merchant boat continues northward without haste. The sail hangs full above you, drawing a steady breeze that keeps the vessel moving with remarkable ease. The water slips quietly along the hull with a sound so constant that, after several days upon the river, it has become almost like slow breathing. You find yourself recognizing the rhythm. Every river has its own voice. This one speaks patiently. Near the stern, one sailor untangles a coil of flax rope that had twisted during the morning. Rather than pulling at the knots with frustration, he loosens each loop one at a time until the rope lies straight again. When he finishes, he coils it neatly beside the mast. Nothing aboard is simply thrown into place. Everything has its home. Mena notices your eyes following the sailor's careful work. A tangled rope always asks for your time. He looks quietly pleased softly. It is kinder to give it that time now than when you truly need it. The advice feels as useful beyond the boat as it does upon it. The river bends gently eastward, revealing another stretch of fertile land where irrigation canals shimmer beneath the afternoon light. Men and women work together repairing low earthen banks that guide water toward fields of barley. Several children walk beside them carrying woven baskets filled with damp clay. One by one they press fresh mud into small cracks where yesterday's water had weakened the channel walls. Even the youngest members of the community understand their role. Water reaches every field because everyone contributes. A little farther along, a pair of cattle slowly turns a circular threshing floor. Bundles of harvested grain have already been spread across the packed earth. As the animals walk, the grain separates from its stalks. Workers gather the loosened kernels into growing piles, while the remaining straw is carefully bundled for future use. Nothing from the harvest disappears without purpose. Grain becomes bread. Straw becomes bedding, baskets, roofing, or fuel. The rhythm of work feels complete. The boat glides close enough for the scent of newly harvested barley to drift across the water. It mixes with the fragrance of warm earth and sunlit reeds. You breathe deeply. The valley seems filled with quiet abundance. Before long, another vessel appears around the bend. It is smaller than yours, carrying little more than woven baskets and clay jars. 2 elderly sisters stand aboard while a younger man guides the steering oar. As the boats pass one another, the older women lift their hands warmly. Menna returns the greeting. Taking pottery north? The younger man nods. And bringing oil home. Safe journey. And to you. Within moments, both boats continue on, becoming smaller against the broad river until each is simply another traveller upon the Nile. The afternoon grows quieter. Even the birds seem content to rest beneath the shade of papyrus and palms during the warmest hours. Only the occasional kingfisher darts suddenly across the water before disappearing again into the reeds. You notice that Menna has removed one of the clay jars from beneath its covering. He tilts it gently. Very little water remains. Without concern, he replaces the stopper. There is a spring ahead, he says. We'll stop there. The idea surprises you. You have grown accustomed to villages and docks. A spring seems different. As the sun begins lowering toward the western sky, the boat leaves the main current and enters a quiet inlet sheltered by tall reeds and clusters of tamarisk trees. The water here is almost perfectly still. Dragonflies skim its surface, their wings catching flashes of light as they dart between reeds. The crew lowers the sail. The boat drifts silently until its bow touches the muddy bank. A narrow footpath leads inland. Menna picks up several empty jars. You follow. The path winds gently beneath scattered acacia trees whose light shade offers welcome relief from the afternoon sun. Small wildflowers bloom among patches of grass where moisture lingers longer than in the surrounding land. The walk is peaceful. Only birdsong and the sound of your footsteps accompany you. After several minutes, you hear running water. Not the broad flow of the Nile, something much smaller. A spring emerges from beneath a rocky outcrop, its clear water collecting in a shallow stone basin before flowing into a narrow stream that eventually rejoins the river. Several travellers have already arrived. A shepherd fills leather waterskins while his flock grazes nearby. 2 women wash vegetables inside woven baskets, letting the cool water carry away grains of sand. An elderly man sits quietly beneath a tree, enjoying the shade while his donkey drinks. Everyone waits patiently. There is no crowding. Water belongs to all. When your turn comes, Menna rinses each clay jar before filling it carefully. The coolness of the spring can be felt through the earthen walls. He offers 1 jar to you. The water tastes wonderfully fresh, cool enough to surprise you after the warmth of the afternoon. Nearby, the shepherd smiles. Good water. It always is, Menna replies. My grandfather stopped here. The shepherd nods. So did mine. The exchange lasts only a few moments, yet it quietly reminds you how many generations have paused at this very place. Long before your journey, long after it. The spring continues flowing. Back aboard the vessel, the freshly filled jars are tucked safely into their places. The crew pushes away from the inlet, and the current welcomes you once again. The air has begun to cool. Long shadows stretch across the water. Along the western bank, you notice groups of cattle making their way home. raising faint clouds of dust that glow softly in the evening light. Smoke rises from distant villages where families are preparing their evening meals. The smell reaches you only occasionally when the breeze shifts. Roasting onions. Fresh bread. Burning acacia wood. Simple scents carried gently across the river. As sunset approaches, the boat reaches a broad natural sandbank where several merchant vessels have already stopped for the night. There is plenty of space between them. No one crowds another crew. Everyone values both company and quiet. After securing the boat, the familiar evening routine begins once again. One sailor gathers driftwood. Another checks every cargo bundle before covering it with woven mats against the night's moisture. You help unload the cooking pots. Mena prepares a small fire surrounded by smooth stones collected from previous camps. Dinner tonight is especially comforting. Barley porridge is flavored with fresh herbs gathered at the market 2 days before. Soft cheese is crumbled over warm bread. The remaining cucumbers provide welcome freshness. Finally, everyone shares ripe figs, whose sweetness lingers pleasantly after the meal. As darkness slowly settles across the valley, neighboring crews exchange quiet greetings. One merchant walks over carrying a small basket of roasted chickpeas. In return, Mena offers several fresh dates. No bargains are discussed. No records are written. Hospitality travels as freely as trade along the Nile. The visitor introduces himself as Hori, a merchant who transports linen between villages farther downstream. The two men speak quietly about changing water levels, the condition of the northern docks, and the health of mutual friends. Their conversation flows gently, leaving long studies the current between thoughts. No one seems uncomfortable with silence. It is simply another companion around the evening fire. When Hori returns to his own camp, the stars have already begun appearing overhead. The crew lies back upon reed mats spread across the soft sand. Without houses or trees directly above, the sky feels impossibly wide. You can see countless stars mirrored upon the river beside you. For a moment it becomes difficult to tell where the water ends and the heavens begin. Mena notices you looking upward. "When I was a child," he says quietly, "I tried to count them." "Did you?" He chuckles softly. "I always fell asleep first." The gentle laughter fades into another comfortable silence. A cool breeze moves across the camp. The fire settles into glowing embers. Somewhere downstream, another traveler begins humming a quiet melody that drifts across the dark water before disappearing into the night. No applause follows. No audience gathers. The song simply becomes part of the evening, as natural as the whispering reeds or the steady current carrying the Nile toward the distant sea. You wrap your blanket a little closer around your shoulders. The river continues its patient journey through the darkness, carrying boats, memories, friendships, and harvests with the same calm devotion it has offered for centuries. Beneath the stars of ancient Egypt, with the day's work complete and tomorrow's voyage waiting beyond the horizon, you close your eyes once more and allow yourself to drift into the quiet rhythm of the Nile. The first light of morning finds the sandbank exactly as you left it, though it somehow feels new again. During the night, the river has quietly risen by little more than the width of a hand. Tiny ripples now reach places that were dry before sunset. smoothing away footprints left by yesterday's arrivals. You wake before the camp is fully stirring. For a few peaceful moments, you simply watch the Nile. Mist drifts across the surface in long, delicate ribbons. The outlines of neighboring boats appear and disappear behind it, their masts rising like slender reeds against the brightening sky. Somewhere nearby, a flock of ducks lifts from the water all at once, their wings beating softly before they disappear toward a quiet marsh farther downstream. The air is pleasantly cool. It carries the scent of wet sand and river grass. The warmth of the coming day still waits beyond the eastern horizon. Mena is already standing at the water's edge. He has removed his sandals and lets the cool current wash gently over his feet while he studies the river. You walk beside him. Does the water look different? You ask. He lifts a hand in greeting almost immediately, a little higher. He points toward a smooth stone partly hidden beneath the surface. Yesterday, you could see all of it. Now only its rounded top remains visible. The river always speaks, he says without hurry. You simply learn different ways of listening. The observation lingers with you as the camp quietly comes alive. One crew kindles a fire using driftwood gathered the evening before. Another folds sleeping mats into neat bundles. Nearby, Hori's vessel prepares for departure. The linen merchant walks across the sand carrying a small basket covered with cloth. "For your breakfast," he says warmly. Inside are several warm loaves baked in a riverside village the previous afternoon. Mena thanks him and offers dried figs in return. Neither counts what has been given. The exchange feels more like neighbors sharing a meal than merchants balancing accounts. Soon the neighboring boats begin slipping away one by one. Some head toward villages hidden beyond the northern bends of the Nile. Others prepare to cross toward the western bank before continuing their own routes. For a short while, the river resembles a quiet crossroads where everyone gradually chooses a different direction. The sail rises smoothly once again. The morning wind catches it almost at once. Your own boat glides back into the broad current, leaving only widening ripples behind. The riverbank changes steadily throughout the morning. Tall papyrus marshes gradually give way to open stretches of farmland where broad fields shimmer beneath the growing sunlight. Workers move among them with patient purpose. Several men guide teams of oxen pulling wooden sledges loaded with harvested grain. Women spread sheaves across open courtyards where they will continue drying beneath the sun. Children chase away curious birds that wander a little too close to the harvest. No one appears hurried. The work follows the rhythm of the season rather than the rhythm of a clock. The valley itself seems to breathe slowly. Farther ahead, a narrow canal branches away from the Nile. Its entrance is marked by wooden posts driven firmly into the bank. Small boats travel in and out, carrying baskets of vegetables, bundles of flax, and jars sealed with clay. Mena steers closer. We'll visit a farming estate. The canal is narrower than the river, and the sail is lowered. Long poles now guide the boat gently forward. The water here lies perfectly calm. Dragonflies hover above the reeds. Tiny frogs leap from floating leaves whenever the hull passes too closely. The quiet becomes deeper still. Soon the canal opens into a broad basin surrounded by cultivated land. A substantial estate stands nearby. Its whitewashed walls rise above orchards filled with fig trees and date palms. Several large granaries stand together behind them, their rounded roofs designed to keep precious grain dry. Workers notice the arriving boat and begin walking toward the landing place. Their greetings are warm but unhurried. Clearly, Mena has visited many times before. An older steward welcomes him with an easy smile. The northern villagers must be waiting. They usually are. And your journey? The river has been kind. The steward inclines his head with quiet satisfaction. He leads everyone toward one of the granaries where several fresh sacks of barley await transport. Before loading begins, however, something else happens. A scribe arrives carrying a small wooden writing board. He sits beneath the shade of a sycamore tree while the steward calls out each measure of grain. The scribe records every amount carefully upon papyrus. His reed pen moves with remarkable steadiness. Every few lines he pauses, gently sharpening its tip with a small bronze knife. You watch with fascination. Writing requires patience very different from rowing a boat or carrying grain. Each careful mark preserves agreements that may be remembered long after voices have fallen silent. The steward notices your interest. Good records prevent poor memories. Mena chuckles softly. And poor arguments. Even the scribe smiles without lifting his eyes from the page. The grain is soon loaded aboard. Freshly harvested, it carries the warm scent of clean straw and sun-dried fields. Each sack is stacked carefully beside the others, balanced so that the boat will continue riding evenly in the water. While the crew works, you wander only a little way through the estate. An orchard stretches behind the granaries. Fig trees cast broad circles of shade where several workers pause to enjoy their midday meal. Goats graze quietly beneath the branches, trimming fresh grass that grows wherever irrigation channels provide enough moisture. Nearby, a gardener tends rows of onions, lettuce, leeks, and herbs. He kneels patiently, removing weeds one by one. You ask whether the work ever ends. He laughs gently. No, he places another weed into a basket. It simply changes. His answer feels wonderfully suited to the Nile itself. The river's work never ends either. It simply changes with every season. Before leaving, the steward presents Mena with a small jar of fresh honey. A gift. The merchant hesitates. You've already trusted me with your grain, and you've delivered it faithfully for many years. The steward closes Mena's hand gently around the jar. Some gifts are easier to accept than refuse. With quiet gratitude, Mena inclines his head. The canal carries you back toward the Nile. As the wider river comes into view once again, the landscape suddenly feels vast after the sheltered calm of the estate. The breeze has strengthened. The sail rises. The boat resumes its familiar northward journey. By midday, the crew enjoys a meal unlike previous days. Fresh bread from Hori, soft cheese, slices of cucumber. A little honey spread carefully across warm loaves. No one uses very much. Honey is precious. A little is enough. Its sweetness lingers pleasantly, making the simple meal feel quietly festive. During the afternoon, clouds gather high above the western desert. They offer little chance of rain here, but they soften the sunlight, casting gentle shadows across the valley. The changing light transforms everything. Palm groves appear darker. The limestone cliffs glow softly. The river itself becomes a deeper shade of blue. It reminds you how differently a familiar place can appear without changing at all, much as the same melody can feel different when played on another instrument. Later, Mena reaches into one of the storage baskets and removes a folded piece of linen. Inside rests a small balance scale with carefully carved stone weights. He begins checking a shipment of herbs purchased several days before. Each bundle is weighed briefly, not because he distrusts anyone, simply because merchants depend upon accuracy. Satisfied, he folds the scale away again. Trade lasts longer than profit, he says. If people know your measures are honest, they welcome you back. You think of every village visited along the river, every greeting, every familiar face. Trust has travelled beside the cargo all along. As the afternoon slowly slips toward evening, another broad bend reveals something different upon the eastern bank. Columns, tall, pale, standing proudly above rows of trees. Their outlines grow clearer as the boat approaches. A temple complex rises beyond the river, its entrance flanked by towering pylons painted in brilliant colors that still catch the fading sunlight. From this distance, you cannot hear the voices within its courtyards. You see only priests moving slowly between the columns, wisps of incense rising into the calm evening air, and visitors arriving quietly with baskets of offerings. No one aboard interrupts the peaceful silence. Even Mena simply inclines his head respectfully as the boat glides past. The temple remains part of the landscape, just as naturally as the fields, the villages, and the river itself. The current carries you onward. Behind you, the great columns slowly become smaller until they blend once more into the valley. Ahead, the Nile continues its endless path beneath the soft light of the approaching evening, inviting another gentle day of travel to unfold. The temple remains visible for a surprisingly long time after the boat has passed. Its painted gateways catch the last warmth of the afternoon sun, while the towering flagpoles stand quietly against the pale sky. Gradually, distance softens every sharp edge. The columns become slender lines. The walls blend into the limestone beyond them. At last, even those outlines disappear behind a gentle curve of the river, leaving only the Nile itself to accompany your thoughts. No one aboard speaks for several minutes. The silence does not feel empty. It feels comfortably shared. The wind continues to fill the sail, carrying the vessel over water that has grown almost perfectly smooth. Reflections of palms stretch across the surface in long ribbons that break apart each time the bow passes through them. You rest one hand upon the polished rail. Days of travel have made its surface remarkably familiar. The timber has been worn smooth by generations of merchants, sailors, and travelers who have stood in much the same place, watching the same river carry them toward places still unseen. Mena moves quietly along the deck, checking the lashings that hold the newest cargo. The jar of honey remains carefully wrapped inside layers of woven reed. Bundles of herbs rest beneath a linen cloth to keep them shaded. The remaining sacks of grain have settled slightly during the afternoon, so together you shift two of them only the width of a hand to keep the boat perfectly balanced. When the work is finished, he gently presses one palm against the nearest sack. There, he acknowledges the remark with quiet satisfaction. A boat likes balance. You begin to notice how often he speaks about the vessel as though it were a trusted companion. Not because he imagines it to be alive, rather because years of careful travel have taught him that a well-kept boat rewards attention just as faithfully as fertile fields reward patient farmers. The afternoon breeze carries the pleasant scent of flowering shrubs growing somewhere beyond the eastern bank. Soon you discover their source. A long avenue of sycamore figs stretches beside a village where houses stand beneath generous shade. Their branches reach across narrow paths, protecting people from the strongest sunlight of the day. Children gather fallen figs into shallow baskets. Nearby, women spread freshly washed linen across ropes tied between tree trunks. The white cloth stirs gently in the breeze. For a moment, it resembles rows of small sails waiting beside the river. The comparison comes so naturally that it makes you smile. Life on land and life upon the Nile seem to borrow from one another in countless quiet ways. The boat slows as several fishermen cross the current ahead. Their nets stretch almost invisibly beneath the surface, supported by floats carved from light wood. Rather than forcing a passage, Mena signals with one raised hand. The fishermen acknowledge him immediately. One begins drawing the nearest net toward his boat, creating enough room for your vessel to pass safely.
Good catch today?
Mena asks. The fisherman lifts a woven basket. Several gleaming tilapia lie inside. Enough for every house, a fine day's work, and for you. The exchange ends with warm smiles. Within moments, both boats continue without delay. Courtesy takes very little time. As the sun begins its gentle descent, the valley becomes increasingly lively once more. Workers return from distant fields, carrying wooden tools across their shoulders. Goats wander slowly home in small groups. Smoke rises from cooking fires hidden among the trees. From somewhere beyond the western bank comes the faint sound of rhythmic hammering. Mena listens. A cooper. You glance toward him. Making barrels? He nods. Or repairing them? He smiles. Wood speaks loudly if you strike it. The sound fades as the river carries you onward. By late afternoon, another landing comes into view. Unlike the busy market several days before, this place serves mostly local farmers. Its dock is modest. Only 3 small boats are tied there. A pair of donkeys waits patiently beside neatly stacked baskets of onions. Several women wash vegetables in broad woven trays using water drawn from the river. The boat ties alongside only briefly. No grain is unloaded today. Instead, Mena has promised to deliver a packet of letters. The small bundle emerges from a leather pouch wrapped carefully in linen to protect the papyrus from moisture. Each letter has been written by a scribe in another village farther south. Family news, business agreements, requests for supplies, simple greetings carried by trusted travelers. A grey-haired woman steps forward as Mena offers her one folded sheet. She accepts it with both hands. My grandson writes often. He says the northern harvest has begun. Her face brightens. Then he is well. She asks no further questions. The letter itself will tell the rest. Nearby, a younger man receives another message. He thanks the merchant and quietly slips it into his belt without opening it immediately. Some words deserve an unhurried moment at home. Watching these small exchanges, you realize that merchants often carry more than cargo. They carry news, memories, promises, connections between families separated by many days of travel. The Nile moves not only goods, but lives. Before departing, one of the villagers brings a basket filled with fresh leeks. For your journey. Mena accepts only part of the gift. The rest should stay here. There are plenty. He smiles gently. And there will be more. Even generosity finds its balance. Back upon the river, the crew prepares the evening meal while the boat continues drifting with the current. There is no need to stop yet. The breeze remains steady. The light remains generous. One sailor chops the newly gathered leeks with careful strokes of a bronze knife. They are added to lentils simmering inside a clay pot together with onions, herbs, and a little oil. The fragrance slowly spreads across the deck. You sit near the bow, watching the river change color once again. Morning silver has long since disappeared. Now the water reflects warm amber beneath the lowering sun. Every passing hour seems to reveal another face of the Nile. A flock of ibis crosses overhead. Their long necks remain perfectly outstretched as they travel toward marshes farther north. For several moments their reflections glide beneath them upon the water before both birds and reflections vanish beyond another bend. The crew eats quietly. Fresh bread is dipped into the warm lentils. A little honey is shared once again, this time stirred into a small bowl for everyone to taste with pieces of bread. Even such a modest treat feels special after many days of simple meals. No one asks for more. The sweetness is enough. As evening approaches, Mena studies the western horizon. We'll stop near the old tamarisk grove. You've camped there before? He laughs softly. I've forgotten how many times. The grove appears shortly afterward. Several ancient trees stand close together where the bank rises gently above the river. Their roots grip the earth firmly despite many seasons of changing water. The boat settles easily beside them. As always, the evening routine unfolds with quiet familiarity. The sail is lowered, folded, and covered. The steering oars are lifted ashore to dry. Water jars are checked. Cooking pots are cleaned with sand before being rinsed. One sailor quietly repairs the strap of a leather sandal using a bone needle and flax thread. Another brushes loose sand from woven sleeping mats. You gather a few fallen branches for the fire. Their dry wood catches quickly, sending a warm glow beneath the trees. As darkness gradually spreads across the valley, the breeze cools. The scent of tamarisk leaves mingles with wood smoke. Crickets begin their evening song. Across the river, tiny lamps appear one by one in distant homes, each a quiet reminder of families sharing meals, telling stories, or preparing for another day's work. Mena sits beside the fire, holding a smooth pebble between his fingers. You recognize it as one from the small cloth bundle his father once carried. He turns it, thoughtfully. My father found this near here. He places the stone back into the pouch. When I stop beneath these trees, I always remember that journey. You ask if he remembers many of them. He smiles. Not every day. He looks toward the softly flowing Nile, but certain places remember for you. His words settle gently into the evening. The river, the grove, the familiar bend, the spring, the market. Each place quietly gathers the memories of those who return again and again. Above the camp, the stars appear slowly, one after another, until the whole Egyptian sky shines with quiet brilliance. The fire burns low. The cruise settles into restful silence. Beside you, the Nile continues its endless journey toward the northern sea, carrying not only grain and trade, but the countless ordinary moments that, together, become a life well traveled. The embers beneath the tamarisk trees glow softly through the night, fading from warm orange to quiet shades of grey as the hours pass. Occasionally, a branch settles deeper into the ash with the faintest crackle before returning once again to silence. Beyond the fire, the Nile never pauses. Even while every traveller sleeps, the river continues its patient journey toward the northern sea, carrying moonlight across its gentle surface. When you open your eyes, dawn has only just begun to touch the eastern horizon. The stars are reluctant to leave. A few still shine above the western desert, while the sky beneath them slowly brightens from deep indigo to pale blue. The camp awakens gradually. No bell announces the morning. No shouted orders disturb the quiet. One sailor stretches before walking to the river with an empty water jar. Another folds his blanket with practiced care, smoothing each crease before placing it neatly beside the rest of the supplies. The scent of cool earth rises from the riverbank. Tiny beads of dew cling to the grasses growing beneath the tamarisk branches. Mena kneels beside the boat with a small wooden mallet resting across his knees. He gently taps several pegs, securing one of the crossbeams. Each strike is light. Measured, he pauses after every tap, listening more than looking. You stand nearby until he notices. Loose wood speaks differently, he says. He taps another peg. The sound is slightly sharper. This one is firm. Another gentle tap. A softer note. This one wanted a little attention. The repair takes only moments. Like so many tasks on the journey, it prevents tomorrow's problems rather than solving today's. Breakfast is shared beneath the trees. Fresh bread remains from yesterday's baking. The last of the soft cheese is divided evenly among the crew. A handful of figs completes the meal. The honey jar is carefully wrapped again and returned to its safe place among the cargo. No one suggests finishing it. Some things are more enjoyable when allowed to last. Soon the boat slips quietly back into the current. Morning mist drifts close to the surface, hiding the far bank for a time. The world feels smaller while the mist remains, as though the Nile itself has become a peaceful corridor leading gently north. The sound of water seems louder now, not because the river has changed, because everything else has become quieter. As the mist begins lifting, the opposite bank slowly returns. Palm trees emerge first. Then fields. Then the outlines of distant houses. It feels almost like watching a careful painter reveal one layer of a landscape after another. The sail catches a gentle breeze, and the journey settles into its familiar rhythm. A little while later, Mena reaches beneath a woven covering and removes several empty grain sacks that had already been delivered to their destinations. Instead of discarding them, he spreads each one across the deck. One sailor begins brushing away loose kernels caught inside the seams. Another checks for worn stitching. Where threads have loosened, a bone needle and fresh flax cord quickly strengthen them again. You help fold the finished sacks into neat bundles. They will be used again, perhaps many times. Nothing about them suggests they are old. They simply carry the quiet marks of useful work. The river widens as the morning continues. Small sandbars appear near the eastern bank, where flocks of birds gather in remarkable numbers. White pelicans stand shoulder to shoulder. Their enormous bills rest comfortably against their chests while they wait for fish moving through the shallows. Farther away, graceful spoonbills sweep their flattened bills through the water with slow side-to-side movements. The marsh seems wonderfully alive, yet nothing feels hurried. Even the birds feed with patient confidence. Mena notices you watching them. They know where breakfast will come. He smiles. They've been coming longer than merchants have. The boat passes quietly enough that most of the birds remain undisturbed. Only a handful take flight, circling once before settling again a short distance away. By mid-morning, a broad ferry appears ahead. Unlike the trading boats you have passed during previous days, this one carries people rather than cargo. Families stand together beneath simple reed shelters, while several donkeys wait calmly beside baskets of vegetables and bundles of firewood. The ferry moves steadily across the river using both poles and oars. As the two vessels approach one another, both crews naturally adjust their courses. There is no confusion, no raised voices. Years of shared travel have taught everyone how to meet safely upon the Nile. A little girl aboard the ferry notices your boat. She waves enthusiastically. One of your sailors laughs softly and waves back. The child smiles even wider before turning to point excitedly toward the merchant vessel. Her grandfather follows her gesture. He lifts one hand in greeting. Mena returns it. For only a few moments, the two boats travel side by side. Then, each quietly continues toward its own destination. The river carries strangers close together for only a short while before gently separating them again. Late in the morning, the current guides you toward another riverside settlement. This one sits slightly higher above the water than most villages you have visited. Stone steps lead from the landing up to rows of mud brick homes shaded by palms and sycamores. Near the top of the steps, several craftsmen work beneath open shelters. The steady tapping of tools reaches the river long before you arrive. Today's stop is brief. Only 2 jars of oil are scheduled for delivery. Still, Mena suggests stretching your legs while the cargo is unloaded. You climb the broad steps together. The village feels peaceful. Several potters shape damp clay upon simple wheels turned slowly by hand. Rows of finished bowls dry in the morning sun. Nearby, a carpenter carefully smooths the surface of a cedar chest using a bronze scraper. The scent of fresh wood fills the shaded workshop. You pause to watch. The carpenter smiles without interrupting his work. This timber came from far away. He runs one hand across the smooth grain. It deserves patience. Mena admires the craftsmanship. You've hidden every tool mark. The carpenter nods. The wood remembers them even if no one else does. The 2 craftsmen speak for several minutes about timber, river transport, and changing weather along the northern reaches of the Nile. Although their trades differ, they understand one another easily. Good work has its own language. Near the marketplace, a baker removes warm loaves from a clay oven using a long wooden paddle. The fragrance drifts through the square. Several customers wait quietly beneath a woven awning. Nobody presses forward. Everyone knows there will be enough. Mena purchases 2 fresh loaves for tonight's meal. The baker wraps them inside clean linen before handing them over. They'll still be soft this evening, I have no doubt, Mena replies. Returning to the dock, you notice a young apprentice carefully sweeping loose grain from between wooden planks. Rather than throwing it into the river, he gathers every kernel into a small basket. You ask why. He looks almost surprised. It still feeds chickens. Even scattered grain has value. The boat departs once more. The village slowly settles behind the curve of the river. The afternoon breeze arrives earlier than expected. The sail fills eagerly, and the vessel glides forward with hardly any effort from the crew. Lunch is simple. Fresh bread, onions, a few olives traded from another merchant several days before, cool water drawn from yesterday's spring, nothing elaborate, everything satisfying. After the meal, conversation fades. The warmth encourages quiet reflection. You watch the shoreline drift by. Clusters of papyrus. A fisherman standing knee-deep in the shallows. A farmer guiding cattle toward water. A woman washing linen upon smooth stones before spreading it beneath the sun. Each scene lasts only moments before another quietly replaces it. No 2 stretches of the Nile are exactly alike, yet together they form one continuous story. As the afternoon light softens, Mena stands beside the steering oar. He looks ahead for a long while before speaking. We'll reach the delta soon. His voice remains calm, almost thoughtful. The river begins choosing many paths instead of one. He smiles gently. A merchant must choose carefully too. You follow his gaze toward the distant horizon, where the valley seems to broaden almost imperceptibly. The current beneath the boat remains steady, carrying you onward through the peaceful heart of Egypt, where every bend of the river offers another quiet reminder that the greatest journeys are measured not only by distance traveled, but by the gentle moments gathered along the way. The thought of the delta stays quietly with you through the remainder of the afternoon. There is no sudden change in the river, no clear line where one part of Egypt ends and another begins. Instead, the valley seems to breathe a little more deeply. The banks widen by such small degrees that you notice only after many patient miles have slipped beneath the hull. The Nile has carried you faithfully from village to village, from fields heavy with grain to bustling quays lined with merchants. And now it begins preparing for a different landscape without announcing the transition. The water remains calm. The breeze remains gentle. Only the horizon seems to stretch a little farther than before. The sail draws steadily overhead, its linen glowing softly beneath the late afternoon sun. A loose corner flutters now and then, producing a quiet rhythm that blends with the whisper of water sliding along the planks. One sailor notices the movement. Without waiting to be asked, he reaches for a length of fresh cord purchased several days ago. He climbs carefully onto a crossbeam while another steadies the mast below. The loose edge is secured with a series of small, even knots. When he climbs back down, the sail becomes silent again. Mena nods approvingly. A good repair should almost disappear. You look upward. The knot is difficult to find unless you know exactly where to look. The river continues northward beneath broad skies where white clouds drift lazily overhead. Along the eastern bank, Stretches of flax sway gently in the breeze. Their slender blue flowers have mostly given way to seed, and workers move carefully among the plants, pulling entire stalks from the ground rather than cutting them. Bundles are tied neatly before being leaned together in small groups to dry. Mena watches them for a moment. The linen we wear begins there. He points toward the fields. And the sail above us. You glance upward once more. It is easy to forget that nearly everything aboard the vessel has begun somewhere nearby. The rope, the cloth, the baskets, the grain itself. The river gathers the work of many hands into one quiet journey. Before long, you notice another boat resting close to the western bank. Its mast has been lowered. Several people stand knee-deep in the shallows beside it. As your vessel approaches, the reason becomes clear. One side of the hull has settled onto a shallow sandbar. The crew does not appear worried. They work together patiently, unloading several heavy jars onto the bank to lighten the boat. Mena raises a hand. Need another pair of hands? The captain smiles gratefully. If you've a little time. Your own boat is guided alongside in deeper water. 2 of your sailors step ashore. You follow them. The work proves straightforward. Each jar is carried carefully onto dry ground before long poles are placed beneath the hull. Together, both crews push steadily. Nobody strains suddenly. Instead, everyone leans with the same quiet rhythm. After several patient moments, the boat shifts. Then slides. A gentle splash announces its return to deeper water. The captain laughs softly with relief. The river wished to keep us a little longer. Mena smiles. She often changes her mind. The cargo is loaded once again. The grateful crew offers dried fish in thanks. Mena accepts only enough for that evening's meal. The rest belongs with your journey. The captain nods. And safe water to yours. Soon both vessels drift apart once more. No written agreement records the moment. No payment changes hands. Helping another traveler is simply part of life upon the Nile. As the afternoon moves quietly onward, the light begins softening into richer colors. Golden reeds glow beside dark water. Palm trunks cast long reflections that seem almost twice their true height. The breeze cools just enough to make the warmth of the sun especially pleasant. You settle near the bow while Mena unwraps one of the repaired grain sacks. Inside are not grain kernels, but several small tools used throughout the voyage. A whetstone, bone needles, flax thread, a bronze awl, wooden pegs. Each is examined briefly before being returned to its place. He notices your curiosity. My father kept them in this sack. He smiles. I never found a better place. The fabric itself has faded from years of use. Several careful patches cover worn corners. Each repair tells part of a story no written record could fully preserve. A little later, the crew begins noticing increasing numbers of waterfowl resting along the broadening marshes. Flocks rise together whenever a shadow passes overhead. Their wings create a gentle rush of air before settling elsewhere among the reeds. The sounds feel different now. Less like isolated birds, more like entire communities living within the marsh. Mena watches them thoughtfully. The delta feeds many lives. You've traveled there often? Every harvest. He falls silent for a moment. Every year it feels familiar. Another pause, and every year I notice something new. The answer seems perfectly suited to long journeys. Places reveal themselves slowly to those who return. Toward the end of the afternoon, the river passes a broad meadow where dozens of cattle graze beneath the watch of several young herders. The boys carry long staffs polished smooth by years of use. One sits beneath a sycamore tree carving a small wooden whistle, while another watches the animals with quiet attention. Nearby, a girl fills baskets with fresh clover gathered for the evening feeding. The peaceful scene slips gradually behind the boat. Soon another replaces it. A cluster of beehives made from long clay cylinders rests beneath a shelter of reeds. Beekeepers move calmly among them, their linen garments wrapped closely around their arms. Thin streams of cool smoke drift toward the hives, encouraging the bees to remain settled while honeycombs are inspected. Mena smiles when he sees them. Our little jar came from work like that. You think of the honey shared over warm bread only yesterday. Every simple meal aboard the boat carries the labor of many unseen people. As the sun lowers nearer the horizon, the crew begins searching for another night's resting place. The riverbank here offers broad stretches of firm ground. At last, Mena points toward a small rise shaded by acacia trees. There the boat glides ashore with barely a sound. Mooring ropes are tied. The sail is lowered carefully, folded into broad layers, and covered against the dew. Water jars are lifted ashore. One sailor walks a short distance inland collecting fallen branches, while another checks each cargo bundle before nightfall. You help prepare the evening fire. Dry acacia wood burns with a steady flame and little smoke. Dinner feels especially satisfying after the afternoon's work helping another crew. The dried fish given in thanks is warmed over glowing coals. Fresh bread from the village bakery is shared alongside onions and leeks. A little honey finishes the meal. No crumb is wasted. As darkness gathers, another merchant boat anchors farther along the bank. Its crew lights a small fire of their own. For a while, both camps exist quietly beneath the same evening sky, separated only by the gentle sound of flowing water. Eventually, one of the neighboring sailors walks over carrying a small woven basket. Inside are roasted broad beans seasoned with salt. He offers them with an easy smile. Mena thanks him and passes around several ripe dates in return. The exchange is simple. No one keeps count. Conversation wanders peacefully between the two crews. They speak of changing winds, of repairs completed during the season, of children growing taller between one voyage and the next. One man mentions that his eldest son has begun learning to read from the temple scribe in his village. Another says his daughter now helps weave baskets beside her grandmother. The stories are quiet, ordinary, yet they seem to belong naturally beside the firelight. The river has carried everyone here by different routes, but for one evening those routes gently overlap. When the neighboring crew returns to their own camp, silence gradually settles once again beneath the acacia trees. Above you, the stars appear brighter than ever. The Milky Way stretches softly across the heavens like a pale ribbon, echoed below by the silver path of moonlight drifting across the Nile. Mena looks upward for a long while. Then he speaks almost quietly enough for the river alone to hear. My father used to say that every voyage ends twice. You wait. Once when the cargo is delivered. He smiles gently, and once when the river begins calling you back. The words remain with you as the fire settles into glowing embers. The Nile flows steadily through the night, carrying the promise of tomorrow's waters, where the broad channels of the delta wait patiently beyond the next gentle bend.